Look, people are angry, and who can blame them? When you were outshot 28-5 in Europe in a game you should probably win, people are going to... Oh, no, wait, sorry, that's Spurs. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You block me on Twitter. That's Tottenham Hotspur. Losing 3-2, getting sent down to 10 men, and managing 5 shots on the Galatasaray goal to the 28 they conceded, and over 3.5 or around 3.5 expected goals conceded. So they're always there to remind you it could be worse. This is a Galatasaray team, I should point out, that got knocked out of the qualifiers of the Champions League, for the Champions League, by young boys. So there's always that other situation you could be in, reminding you how it could be. Sorry, this one's a little bit on the later side. We will have a fantastic, amazing patron pod for you tomorrow with Clive. Just not totally sure what it's going to be about, but we're gonna sort that out. I'm sure there'll be some kind of Chelsea preview. Clive's not here today because he's dealing with a family matter. We wish him well. Everything else is good here. We did the instant reaction yesterday to the Inter thing, that one. And then, by the way, Tim and I did a Patreon pod that was pretty cool. We did a stock review of all the players for the whole season, starting them at a power value of 100 and going up and down. And so if you want to see where we rate all the players, that's over there. We do have some rewatches coming back, and scouting video season is almost upon us. We will be doing scouting videos. We might get one for Gyökeres up pretty soon on sort of what he's been up to this season, which is, it says here, scoring all the goals, especially against Manchester City. Interesting one. All right, we've got an interesting game to take apart in the Inter game. We'll also talk about the Chelsea game, and here to do that with me now is Paul. You can find him on Twitter at PassMyPencil.
Woo!
And Tim, you can find him on Twitter at Silberto. Nope. Wow, that's a throwback. Stillmanator. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
You know, the oldies are the goodies, unless they're the baddies, in which case, don't do them. All right, we're going to dive right into it. This is going to be a tough pod in a way, because there is some frustration starting to bubble up, and I can sort of connect to some of it and understand where some of it's coming from. I also think there's circumstance that if you don't factor it in, you're simply not doing nuanced analysis. And I think there's sort of two sides of humanity. And Paul and I used to wrestle with this one another on the pod when we were a little more argumentative in our young days, when we had energy and vim and vigor. And now we're just decrepit old monsters who don't have the energy to yell at each other. But like, Paul would see the ways in which things can be explained and why there's a positive lining, and I would see why everything was shit. And like, as I have mellowed a bit, I do think that there's context. And so there's going to be a group of people listening who go, maybe this is the pod where they'll say we're shit finally. And then there's going to be other people who say, maybe this will be the pod where they tell people to shut up, we're fine. Maybe it's both. Let's see how we feel about it. Tim, the entry point for me here is the lineup. Interestingly, because it wasn't a particularly controversial lineup in the sense that Rice was out. We're hearing maybe a broken toe issue, probably going to play against Chelsea though. And so like it was what you'd expect, right? It was Kai and Leo up front in the 4-2-4 kind of thing, with Martinelli and Saka off the sides, Merino and Partey in the midfield, White and Timber, proper fullbacks picked, Gabriel Saliba and Raya. And here's my only reason why I think this is somewhat controversial. Mikel had an interesting opportunity here. Things haven't quite looked right and haven't quite been working the way we'd like them to. Chelsea is a big game on the horizon. I think people would have been okay with the idea of a little bit of rotation for Inter. I know it's the Champions League, but they rotated. They did. They got Napoli at the weekend. And I don't mean rotation like, play the academy, but like if he had wanted to give Nwaneri a start, if he had wanted to give Sterling, a start, if he had wanted to do something with shape that was a little different to see if it sparks us, he had a good opportunity to do it, right? See it ahead of Chelsea and also pick it in a game where I think people understand you're trying to balance the equities between the midweek game and the weekend game. But he didn't. He went with the thing that hasn't been working. And I'm wondering what you think of the decision to sort of run it back, so to speak.
Yeah, sure. Because there's two ways of thinking of it, isn't there? There's the kind of, let's try something else, or there's the, let's try and play this back into form a little bit. And actually,
good point.
Arteta's kind of, and then you've got the kind of context of like Ødegaard's back in the squad, which means he's close to a return. I think the amount of minutes he gets in the end, which actually only come when Havertz, when his brains are splattered across his face, but it's stoppage time, that suggests they were not going to use Ødegaard really, which probably suggests not going to be ready to start on Sunday. However, his return is nigh. And so there's probably another line of, at least there's some parenthesis there, which is he's going to be back soon. So what we're doing at the moment, we probably won't be doing much longer anyway. So what's the point in really one game trying to do something different when it's probably not going to get any continuity anyway? So I wasn't enormously surprised, to be honest. I almost felt like the Rice not going was like the concession, if you know what I mean. Because I'm with you. Like, I've broken my toe, it kind of hurts, but I think with like with a magic injection, you can probably get through it. And
As long
and
as
it,
it's not the big one, right? If it's the
yeah,
big toe, issue. Otherwise, probably fine.
yeah, exactly. And actually, it might be convenient for Arsenal in that he probably should be able to play on Sunday. But if we're smart, in the 92nd minute, he'll go, "Ow, ow, oh, I can't go on. Oh, what's the next game? Is it England? Oh no, oh, that was the last thing I wanted to happen." So there might be like a little bit of expedience or convenience there, and indeed that might be what they're doing with Odegaard as well. Maybe they're just a bit like, if we start him, Norway will be watching type thing. So I think there are there are a few things that go into it, but ultimately, I think basically we always we kind of underestimate really with Arteta. He always wants to win,
Yeah.
basically, and therefore there are rarely any concessions because he wants to win the game, and for us as fans as well, in the lead up to this game, I didn't feel connected to it. Maybe it's because I wasn't there. And I'm looking at Chelsea on Sunday. I think everyone's looking at Chelsea on Sunday. I think most of us went into this game kind of going, meh, we're in all right position in the Champions League. We've got the fixtures left to claw this back. If we don't get into that top 8, it won't be because we lost 1-0 away at Inter, I don't think. I think it will be because we've messed up somewhere else. But when the game starts and you're in it, and if you have a little glance at the Discord or your Twitter timeline or whatever while it's going on, that I'm not sure I feel connected to this game. I don't really care. I'd write this game like that. That goes out the window.
Yep.
Straight away.
Yep.
So we're never as sanguine about it as we think we're going to be. So I wasn't enormously surprised. And at this stage, if Odegaard was going to be out for like another month or something, I'd have said it as a matter of urgency to try something else. At least to be able to show another face. And Arteta's like post-match comments, for the first time, he really pointed to a couple of refereeing decisions that might be frustration on his part. I think it's more likely that he's trying to like whip the team up a little bit. And he said something about how this was our best European away performance in years, which might be overstating it a little bit, but I think possibly deliberately overstated, because what he wants to light a fire under this team, really.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, we haven't scored a goal away in Europe since PSV last season when Eddie Nketiah did it. But like, we could have in this game. I think we had 1.8-ish expected goals. Like, a few bounces go a little bit differently. I think it could have worked out. We certainly could have gotten a penalty when Sommer punches Merino in the head, but maybe the ref just felt Merino deserved to be punched in the head. You never know. Maybe he's just that kind of guy, has that kind of look about him. And then of course they get the penalty. We'll come to that in a moment. But Paul, I think there's another issue here, and it really speaks to squad construction, because we are missing a player who will pop up in pockets of space in the central part of the pitch to create havoc in the attacking third. We know we can give it out to Martinelli and let him try to beat two guys, and we know we can give it out to Saka and let him try to beat two guys. But it might be nice to get it to someone in the middle of the park and let them try to do something that connects all of these things together and allows the wide players to make hurtful runs, or Kai Havertz or someone to try to get into the box. Well, we don't have Odegaard, or at least we didn't have him to start this game. He is essentially back now. We got rid of Smith Rowe. We got rid of Vieira. And the fact of the matter is, we didn't go out and buy a player of that profile. Whatever you think of Merino, that's not his profile. Now, that profile might look really handy to have when Odegaard's back, but when Odegaard's not there, the only guy of that profile is Ethan Nwaneri. Now, you can point to the fact that he's 17 years old and say, it's not time. It's not time to put that pressure on him. I would say when you get rid of ESR and you get rid of Vieira and you don't have Odegaard and you don't prioritize adding in that role, then you wind up in a situation where the guy you've got is the guy you got to use, whether he's 17 or not. And by the way, Kubarsi at Barcelona, Yamal at Barcelona, Rico Lewis at City, you can point to Kobbie Mainoo at United. There are players being thrown in the deep end. Some of them are sinking and some are swimming, but I have the feeling that Nwaneri could. What do you think about the decision to continue with a lineup that feels short, a central creator in the attacking part of the pitch, and an unwillingness to make this Nwaneri's moment?
Yeah. Totally get it. I totally get the need for it.
There's a giant butt coming, like the biggest butt you've ever seen. Like think about a huge horse. There's like a horse-sized butt coming right now. Okay, go ahead.
Well, we won't get into it because we've covered the ground before. I don't agree that you can say just because Nwaneri is the only guy we have without Odegaard that he has to start, because he's young and like there's all of the reasons why. And I don't care that other 17-year-olds are ready. It doesn't mean this one is. We don't. Arteta, So if it was a 23-year-old, I'd be like, yeah, there's no, and like, if other players of that category, blah, 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 then this guy, like, there's nothing more different than 17-year-olds. They're all at different phases for all sorts of reasons. But your basic premise that we need a guy between the lines at left eight or right eight that can spin heads, do something different, spark other players, get other players in behind, do the killer pass, do the dagger ball. We're massively missing this. Where I would like to talk about the lineup part of it is in that regard, because I think we say, well, he did the same thing. Like, he hasn't really had this particular 11. He's got Ben White back. He's got Timber left. He didn't do the same thing with Trossard and Havertz, I would say. He played Trossard is decidedly the Martin Odegaard role in this case. Other times he's been more of the striker, and Havertz has been closer to Saka. I think it was quite clear that Trossard was, for much of this game, the right eight, and Merino was the left eight. And like, Trossard toiled manfully. He's obviously got some skills. He one or two good passes, but he really didn't move the needle. A lot of frustration with him. I feel a bit bad for the guy. I don't think he did a lot wrong, apart from not being Martin Odegaard, and not many are. But he's probably the most passable imitation of Martin Odegaard we have in our team. And then you go to the other side, and Merino. This was the most interesting thing tactically for me. He only had 10 passes in the first half. And when he was in a position where he could clock up the passes, the kind of the Martin Odegaard role on the left-hand side, the Xhaka role, where you're kind of doing triangles, which is the thing I've been trying to sell you on for weeks now, Elliot, that is his clever. It was interesting. I mean, there isn't a huge sample size, but right early on, all those crosses we saw, what did Merino do when he was in that spot to do triangles? He vacated it and ran into the penalty box right beside Kai Havertz and waited for the cross to come in. The crosses weren't the deluge of desperation. I mean, maybe we cranked it up a notch as the game progressed and we couldn't find another way. But that fascinated me, surprised me, undermined my proposition for Merino, I would say. I haven't given up on it entirely. I thought he was going to be there. Like, you didn't see Xhaka saying, okay, Martinelli, you've been given the ball by me or somebody else behind you. Now I'm going to bail on you, head into the box and wait for you to bang in across. He'd be there, making a movement, a ball to get Martinelli. Nope. Merino 2-3 times in the first half. He's like, oh, okay, you got the ball, Martinelli. I'm standing right beside you. Bye. Heads off into the box, waits for the ball in, which I thought was an agricultural approach to cracking. I was very surprised, very, very, very surprised. And in the second half, other players did that too. And it was Martinelli swinging in crosses. And I'm very, very surprised, and I don't know what this means.
Yeah, and the irony, of course, is it could all look very different if he gets punched in the head, wins the penalty, and we go ahead, or he heads that in. It's one of our biggest chances of the game. So, like, I don't dismiss him running into the box to get on the end of crosses, but I take your point. Like,
that was on 28 minutes, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't.
Yeah.
There was no need for us to go fully agricultural at that point. In fact, we were in a good phase of play, and it was that one where he gets punched in the head is one of those moves where that's the most decided version. He's right in the Xhaka spot over there, and he says, screw this, you got the ball. He runs 30 yards into the box waiting for a cross. It's quite interesting.
And then Martinelli winds up drawing everybody's ire because he's got nothing to do but feed in a cross. It is tough. They say styles make fights, and I do think the styles make fights. I mean, like, Inter got a 0-0 at City. Inter are a great defensive side. They conceded one of their highest XGs allowed this season to us at home in this game. And they played 3 big guys in the center. They barricaded the box and they let us try to serve in crosses. And when you look at this team, you say we can probably do that because there's not a lot of combination play. There just isn't. Trossard and Kai aren't doing it. Merino, as you said, is vacating and he wants to be off the ball. And that's why I just sort of feel it's petulant to say Nwaneri has to start. But I do think that you construct a squad with certain qualities in it. And if the only player with the quality you're clearly crying out for is 17 and you don't play him, then the only thing I could say...
What if he's a quadriplegic in a hospital? Just because he's the only guy with those skills and ability, are you still demanding the guy plays?
No, what I'm saying, though, Paul, is if you don't demand the guy plays, it is inevitable that people's attention then is going to come back to how you've constructed the squad and the holes you've left or the areas you're weak. So it's one of those two things, right? It's not you have to play Nwaneri, but if it's not you have to play Nwaneri, the next thing you're going to notice is who else, and that's where we're all trying to figure this out. By the way, I am going to soften this blow because I have a lot of arguments for why I think we're fine. This performance is certainly better than the result. I think all of our performances are better than our results. I think we're probably going to beat Chelsea and I think we're going to be okay. And I will swing this back to that side of it as we get into the pod. But Tim, I think we should talk about slow starts. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have been a slow starting team a bit this season. I realize we got to go early against Liverpool, but that oomph just isn't there. And we went onto this pitch and looked like we were scared to be there for 15 minutes. And what's interesting is Inter had 3 shots in the first 7 minutes and 4 shots in the rest of the game, one of which is a penalty. But those first 15 minutes before we started to get our hands around this a little bit, those were a little concerning. And I don't think you can say this is a great performance without splitting it into 2 things. A second half that I really started to see in Arsenal, I recognized. Crosses, spamming crosses kind of aside. But the first half, I'm not so sure. And I'm curious how you think about that first 15 minutes in particular, where we just looked not in the game really at all.
Yeah. I suspect it's a mixture of factors. I suspect a bit of fatigue in there. I do think we look a little bit on the leggy side, not like absolutely out on our feet, but I think you can see there is like a sense of ennui in the team, as it were. And I do think that's why Arteta's kind of gone into Mr. Motivator mode a little bit and really talking up the performance because he probably senses that the team needs it a little bit. I do also think there's an element to which that happens in Europe away from home, like quite often. And, Inter fans been there before for this fixture for a much better result than this one. We conceded 1 that night, but we scored infinitely more than 0. So it's a lively stadium and all of that. And so I think there's also an element to which I think there were 2 things about the slow start. One is like fatigue. This happens in Europe. I do also think that I was thinking in that first 15 minutes, how many times do we face a front 2? I was trying to think of a team in the Premier League that does it, because like Inter play this 3-5-2 and have done for years and years, and it just looked to me like it took us 10 minutes to get used to, oh wow, they've got 2 guys when they bang the ball up here. We're used to you go and sort him out and I kind of drop off or whatever, but there's 2 of them sort of thing. So I think there was maybe a little bit of that. But just going back a little bit to the discussion you were having about Merino being in the box, I do think that that's something to keep an eye on, because I know I keep saying this. The first thing we tried to do this summer, everyone repeat after me, was buy Benjamin Sesko. What does that tell you? That tells you that Havertz wasn't ruled out as a left 8, and that to me tells me that Sesko up front and Havertz left 8 was a thing that would have happened on occasion, but now we're going to have Havertz up front, Merino left 8, 2 guys who are very good in the air, good at getting in the box. Like, I think there is something in that is important to Arteta, and he's probably decided that in lieu of being able to buy a striker, the way to power up on the attacking side is to have another guy in the box in Merino, and he has already scored a goal doing that for us. Yeah. So I do think that's something to keep an eye on. But yeah, the slow start, bit travel, bit that happens in the Champions League, bit they're quite good, bit we're a bit tired, a bit coming to grips with their system.
Yeah, I mean, there's a part of the Arsenal fan base that wanted us to go and be rip-roaring Arsenal and tear them apart so we could all feel better about ourselves. It's like, this is a team that got 94 points last season and is 2 seasons removed from being in the Champions League final, which they narrowly lost to Manchester City. They know how to shut games down. We know that, as I mentioned, 0-0 against City earlier this season. I don't know where we are entitled to go to the San Siro and rip them apart. By and large, this is a performance in a vacuum where we were the protagonists. We did more, and we were just on the wrong side of 2 big decisions and maybe a couple deflections that don't go our way. A Kai shot that goes off the soft part of a thigh, a Saliba header that's really poor point blank, a Gabriel header that's cleared off the line. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, can I respond to that in a vacuum thing? Because I think that's really important. I often say, like, sometimes results or performances make more sense once you've got another couple of games afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is worth I'm not suggesting we actually do it, but just mentally put a pin in this and revisit it. I don't know, maybe after Chelsea, I suppose, as an international break. But I think this result, you said this on the instant reaction, a couple of good results, and we could look at this as, that was the first step back. You could see Arsenal again against Inter. A couple of bad results, and it would just feel like a continuation. It would be like, well, we were okay at Inter, but that was games that, like, how this result looks, I think it's really difficult in isolation. I think we'll know more in a couple of weeks whether this was the first rung on the ladder back or whether it was like a slight incline on a bit of a slope.
Yeah, and I mean, it is the problem that we should have battered Inter. Really? Away? Well, we should have battered Newcastle. Literally no one has done that at St. James's Park this season. Well, who should we have battered? Should we have battered City with 10 men? Should we have battered Liverpool with you, me, and Paul playing in back 4? Should we, if you start to look at this season, should we have battered Brighton with 10 men? Should we have battered Bournemouth with 10 men? Should we have battered Villa away or Spurs away? Games we won, by the way. Should we have battered PSG? Should we have battered Atalanta away? Like, the funny thing is, the one game where I think we should have battered them and didn't was Shakhtar at home, where we missed a penalty and we should have won it. We weren't very good. That's not my point. But, like, if you start to tease out this season and say we won at Villa Park and we won at Spurs and we were a second away from winning with 10 men at the Etihad, right? And we beat PSG 2-0 and we got a draw at Atalanta and we outplayed Inter away. I'm not trying to be a Pollyanna or make excuses, but you start to tease the season out and had 4 expected goals against Leicester and 3 expected goals against Southampton, by the way. Like, it's a weird season because we played 3 games with 10 men. We played the whole season without Odegaard. We went to Bournemouth without Odegaard and Saka. We went to Inter without Declan Rice and Odegaard. And, like, the idea that any of these games should be Arsenal sweeping teams aside, when you zoom out, just doesn't really stand up to scrutiny. So
we're starting on the outside lane, right? That's how I look at this season.
Yeah, I mean, Liverpool very easily could wind up having a run when their schedule gets hard that looks like ours recently just does. City just got beat 4-1 by Sporting away, having lost at the weekend in the league. So, you know, it is a difficult thing for me to assess, Paul, because I understand the frustration. We look a little bit tame at the moment. But I also can't think of a game where we were supposed to show up and look spectacular and didn't. I do think Newcastle was the worst performance of the season, which makes the 0 at Inter more frustrating in a game where we probably deserved a goal or 2. So, yeah, it's tricky. Go for it. Yeah.
Look, I think the worst, thank God it wasn't like Newcastle where it was just kind of banal, mediocre schlock. The good thing about this performance was there were plenty of good things, but it also showed the holes in our setup and where our problems are. And our problems are in the attacking third. And they have a lot. It's funny
you say that, by the way, just real quick, because the title of the pod is Better Performance and Result, but something is missing. And I think that's sort of the whole point, right? Like, it was better, it was okay, but something we can all see, something is missing.
Yeah, and there were lots of good things in this. There was lots of volume, right? It wasn't quality, but it was volume. And, like, we have an issue creating because it seemed almost deliberate, the agricultural crosses, etc., swinging them in time after time, which brings me to what Tim said in terms of there seems to be a deliberate plan to be able to get two guys up front. I talked about it a little bit with Merino. But the other interesting thing with Merino was after a few corners, I went back and looked at the game and I'm thinking maybe Nicholas Jover needs to kind of rejig our corner routines because it seems like maybe teams are catching on to it now. It was just one of those things you say in football, oh, maybe they've caught on to us. So when I was looking back at it again and watching it, and like we were doing something different. We had Mikel Merino and Gabriel now kind of co-pilots in the same spots, doing the same thing with Merino typically going to the left post or back post, and didn't yield results. But again, it's another kind of tick in the box to one of Merino's reasons for being here is to be that big guy in the box. I mean, it doesn't surprise anybody. What surprised me was to see us reconfigure how we were doing our corners. There's now Gabriel and Merino, at least in this iteration. It happened several times, or at least 2 times, and a very clear policy to do something different. I don't know if it served Gabriel particularly well, because he likes that freedom to swing back post or front post. But it speaks to the approach in this game, maybe the uses of Mikel Merino, and the leaning into the not the creativity, but the kind of the strength, the height, and leaning into those strengths. And why did we start so slowly? I think after 15 minutes, we started to be clearly the better team. The penalty seemed deeply unfair, per the Greek gods, they tend to be. And it took us 15 minutes to settle because Europe feels different. The refs feel different. I know I had this thing with Tim and I had a bit of back and forth on Twitter a week or so. I was like, hey, people need to give up going on about the refs. We're not doing ourselves any favors. Well, let me tell you what I wanted to do when I came on this pod, which is rip that effing ref and you one. What the hell was that? He was like, both sides have a point, no matter what had just happened. Like if he's governor of Texas, would be responsible for the death penalty, be like, well, the murderer should get an execution, but also so too should the victim. Posthumously,
everybody, the victim did get it.
So Jesus, he drove me fucking nuts.
Well, all right, so let's just come on to that then, Tim. I mean, first of all, do you have the punch in the head as a penalty?
I mean, yes. The way you phrased it there, so I
yeah, someone who's never watched football before would be like, "Wait,
you're the punch in the head as a penalty?" No blood, no foul.
What if the people was a goalkeeper and he was the one doing the punching? If that gives you any context, so no, it's not a penalty.
To me, it's one of those like. Don't get me wrong. I don't like most teams don't get that, and I don't understand why. I don't understand why there's a distinction between that and a defender putting their foot out to try and get a tackle and not getting the ball. Or when a guy does a bicycle kick in the penalty area, that's always given as a free kick, even regardless of whether you like that's just that's high feet. Now I get it, you can't do like high hands for a goalkeeper, but I don't understand how that's like someone needs to explain to me why that's distinct from mistiming a tackle, because I've got no idea. Just one of football's utterly bizarre, weird kind of unwritten rules.
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, I have it as I don't know, because I do think a keeper is entitled to come for the ball and try to punch it. And I do think the attacker is entitled to come with his head to try to head it. And if the keeper gets some of the ball and then the player trying to head the ball winds up in the place where the punch finishes, like I kind of see the argument for the keeper saying, well, I punched the ball and this guy's racing in towards my fists. But I think it's probably a penalty. I'm fine with it not being one, as weird as that sounds. But like Tim with the handball, this falls into that weird category of every single person who watches football knows this is what handball is in the Champions League. Mm-hmm. And every time it's given, every single person who sees it says, how can that be a penalty? You are punishing someone for having arms. And the only way I can address this is it is 100% a penalty by Champions League rules. And those rules are also a nonsense. But I don't want to go into that with you. What I want to say to you is this. I really believe this is a game where both teams would have been fine with a 0-0, get a draw, get out of there and focus on the weekend. And to that point, Inter rested their most attacking players for this game. I mean, yes, they started off pretty well, but after that, they had 3 open play shots other than the penalty in the whole 3 shots other than the penalty in the whole game. I think they were very content for a 0-0. They would have played for it. And I think there was this weird sort of pugilism going on, not actually with the keeper, but to try to figure out, are we going for it or are we not going for it? Handing them a goal was such a gift because I don't think that they intended to really threaten us. I think they would have just shadow boxed us. So that really was unfortunate in the context of a game where I think Inter's strategy would have been to just try to keep us at bay, and we get out of there 0-0, shake hands, and go into the weekend,
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it just exposes the lunacy of, giving like an 85% chance at goal for that when the player, it's not even blocking a shot. Like, it's just, like, I've never quite understood this like weird moral panic over handball. Like, oh my God, it touched his hand. So what? Like, and I get it. Like, there's always going to be like contention around it and all of that. But like, I really don't get how like, oh, it touched his hand. Like, so what? I don't care. Like, who cares if it touched his hand? Like, it's made like got no advantage out of it. It's just bizarre, and it's one of the rare incidences where actually the Premier League rules are better than the Champions League rules. Where
there's been one handball penalty in the Premier League, I think.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
Now that
And
doesn't mean that that's right, but it certainly feels better.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Unless you're like definitely getting an advantage, or like obviously like you punch the ball, or if your hands are, and this is obviously where it's always going to be subjective, but like if your hands are in a ridiculous kind of position, or like move towards the ball or whatever, like, I do think, sorry to use that crude phrase again, but handball is a bit like pornography. Like, it when you see it.
Yep.
And like that is not it. Basically, and yeah, to your point, that it really like it wins into the game. And this is my problem, I think, with this kind of thing. When you say something like Arsenal deserved a draw, and then people come to you with all of the flaws in the performance, and it's like, yeah, I'm not denying those. That doesn't mean we didn't deserve a draw. Like,
right.
The idea that you have to be perfect to deserve a draw is silly. And like, Inter were very, very far from perfect. They defended really well. They got some luck, as they got quite a bit of luck on the night. They were not perfect. So if you're going to use that logic, you have to double bluff yourself and kind of say Inter didn't deserve to win.
It also goes back to the point that, like, since when are we supposed to go to the San Siro against the reigning Italian champions and batter the crap out of them? Like, the problem with that penalty is whatever Inter might have done to stretch themselves or leave some space or make this game a little more open where we could have probed and attacked, and maybe we get a counterattack, you never know, or they don't have everybody bunkered in the box when we're attacking. Like, the penalty just completely changed that. Now, I think we have to talk about some individual performances here then, in terms of where the flaws in the performance are. Because look, the two things can be true. Like, it's an okay performance, but we were very one-dimensional in the way we threatened, very predictable in what we did. Thomas Partey was spraying balls out wide. He was passing the ball pretty well. No one was really getting the ball in the central areas, though. And the player who looks most lost in this role at the moment for me, of the two up front, is Leo Trossard. I think Kai did all right in this game, but I think Leo looks just a little lost in the shuffle. He's standing in the big trees at times. He's not combining really well on either side. Paul, Leo has been a very, very important player for us. I think I like Leo as a squad player who can add something in a game where we need end product, but I don't know if Leo playing this very complicated 9/false 9/10 role is working. And this was a low ebb for me. This was a good Inter team that I don't think had any trouble taking him out of the game.
Yeah, he didn't register. Look, I don't feel like I just don't have the appetite for kind of digging into him. I think he worked his socks off, but and he has good technical ability and he did some good pass, but like, it just doesn't register till you're a level above what he can do in that area. The other thing I'd say is we haven't actually asked him to play right 8. Really, I'm sure we have, but it didn't come to mind when we did that. We asked him to do left, kind of drop into the left 8 kind of spot from the attacking false 9 position. It's a little bit of a tweak to the role, but like he just didn't register. He worked his socks off. He pressed. I did go back and have a look at where's Leo, because it wasn't apparent from the first time watching. The second time around, I was more sympathetic to what he did. The guy absolutely gave it all, just didn't move the needle. And like, without a Martin Odegaard on the pitch, I totally get the call for why don't we look at Ethan Nwaneri. It's one of those performances where Havertz doesn't have that tiki-taka technical level you need. You kind of feel Trossard does or should, but not that extra level you need to kind of command an area of the pitch. We basically have Saka to his own, and there was a lot of uncertain. Like Ben White was kind of sneaking into that spot too, and him and Trossard were standing next to each other, so you're wasting a player. A lot of things didn't kind of click there. It wasn't a great game for Trossard. I don't think that's going to be a regular call up for him. He's still trying to find his way as a starter in this. We thought we had him for a game or two in with Havertz. That was a way to play. But there are certain games where it just doesn't seem to click, and this is not a new role from the right. Like, I do think this was different. This was the right eight role, and he just doesn't have enough. He has a lot of what you're looking for in terms of skill sets. He just doesn't have enough to move the needle. Very frustrating. You did mention Thomas Partey, though. Did you see him sprint back from inside our half to catch their striker in the first half? It was actually their number 10. His fitness levels, I won't spend a lot of time on it, but it's getting more and more interesting who the starting 11 is with all fit, because he's actually getting up to the kind of fitness levels we questioned whether he could ever get to. That was a full-on sprint for 45 yards and tracking down the guy right into the 6-yard box, and like, oh, that's interesting. So yeah, I think so. Standout players for me on the other side of it were Partey and, to a degree, Timber. I think he had a really good game that made some things happen, even if it wasn't entirely brilliant. You can see from the left side, he did some very interesting attacking stuff, charging into midfield, dribbling. I think those two are the most interesting games in terms of the starters.
The other player who I don't think had the most interesting game, Tim, and he didn't last the game, is Mikel Merino. Now, according to Mikel Arteta, he took him off because he wasn't feeling great after the punch to the head. I don't know if that's 100% the case or 50% the case and 50% convenient, because I don't think it was working for him. And Jesus came on for him. And I'm not going to say Jesus was brilliant, but I think it gave us a little something, like who's going to make a darting run, who's going to try to get in the box. And Merino, to me so far, and I keep emphasizing this point, he's played very little. He's integrating. He's learning. He doesn't have Odegaard next to him. Every game, someone's out. Rice is out. Odegaard's out. Saka and Odegaard are out. We're down to 10 minutes. When he's played, he's not had the ability to just integrate into a system that is sort of firing on all cylinders right now, which makes it even harder for him to do that. But the technical level, the speed to the ball, the passing, like the game is passing him by a little bit. And his ability to make himself available to receive the ball hasn't been great. I mean, he had 18 touches in the game. Ethan Nwaneri played 9 minutes and had 13. He was 7 of 10 passing in 45 minutes. Ethan Nwaneri was 9 of 10 passing in 9 minutes. Now, again, different game state, right? 0-0 for most of Merino's, 1-0 to Inter for most of Ethan's 9 minutes, where we were just trying to pile on the pressure at the end. So I get that, but I still think it highlights the point that this is a guy who is struggling, I think, to get involved, and it's certainly not helping Gabriel Martinelli, that's for sure.
Yeah. I think that's all fair enough. All of what you said's fair enough. Like, he's playing in a team that has a creative deficit at the moment without Odegaard, and I think Trossard and Merino in midfield, that's stodgy, isn't it? It lacks a creator. I think in reality, either one of those players could have come off at half time. bring Gabriel Jesus on. That made all the sense in the world to me, not least because clearly, you look at some of the first things Arsenal did in that second half, and they really started putting Inter under pressure in terms of the press. And there's that one of the first things Gabriel Jesus does is like goes in on the goalkeeper, basically, and actually Inter basically abandoned playing out from the back for the last kind of half an hour or so, and that's to do with the press. And unfortunately, I think that's more likely the reason that Gabriel Jesus came on than the idea that he might score a goal. But there is no doubt that there are caveats and context, not least that the guys played, I think, 350 minutes so far for Arsenal. Merino, never with Odegaard, once with Rice, blah blah blah. But absolutely, it seems like he's adapting as well. Arsenal's left back position, because Calafiori's had some niggles as well. That's just so fluid. Left back, we're playing with different left backs all the time still, and just can't get any continuity on that left hand side. And I think it's fair to say everyone struggled to get their hands around that left 8 role, at least initially. Havertz this time last year, we were asking questions about him. Xhaka didn't get to it immediately, so there is probably a little bit of difficulty baked into that role as well. I know we kind of characterize him, and I don't think incorrectly, as this dual monster who wins loads of headers and wins loads of tackles. Evidently, his timing is maybe a little bit off on some of those things at the moment, but I think you can see that's going to happen. This might be ignorance on my part because I didn't watch him at his previous club, but I just have this idea that if you play quite a decent role in a Spain midfield, you're probably not terrible technically, and I'm sure he's probably cleaner technically than we've seen so far. So I'm reasonably relaxed about it. I reckon in another 4 to 5 games time, if it's still like this, I think I'd definitely be sounding the we've signed a 28-year-old under the assumption that he'd integrate quite quickly, and that's not happening. But I'm not there yet, particularly with all the aforementioned caveats.
Well, then you know what? Let's just do this right now before we start to shift gears to the question of how we create more goals in the Chelsea game. Paul, we have gone from being an 8th place team to a team that got 89 points and broke its goal difference record. The squad building has been brilliant. There's simply no other way to say it. You don't go from 8th to right there with Manchester City and looking like one of the best teams in Europe without great squad building. I think what it's done, though, is made us forget that actually transfers fail almost as much as they succeed. They're about a 50-50 proposition, especially at the more expensive level. And you only have to look as far as a Manchester United to see that. Even Chelsea, they're starting to look better, but they've had so many failures along the way. Manchester City, we don't think about it, but Calvin Phillips, Mateus Nunes, right? They've had some failures. I think Jack Grealish, honestly, is probably a failure for the money that they spent. I think that'd be fair to say. So it happens. And I'm not saying our summer was a failure, but from a profile standpoint, we went for Calafiori. We look a lot better with him playing, I think, because I think he gives us an ability to do some things with that position as an attacking influence that we don't necessarily do with other players. But he's an injury hit player who has been injured. Went for Mikel Merino instead of maybe an Odegaard on the left, a more small space final third player, on the ball player, a player who can beat a man, a player who can combine. And we went for Raheem Sterling. Now, I don't think for a million years Raheem Sterling was the plan. I think there was another plan, and Raheem Sterling is what we got. But we might as well touch on him too. Paul, he's not being used. And in a game where there's a packed defense, whatever you think of Sterling, not in a run very much, apparently, and maybe not pressing and defending, he still looks like he can beat a man off the dribble. He still looks like he can make a 2-yard darting run into a hurtful space and be dangerous in that respect. And the fact that he wasn't trusted here and wasn't used here, that was the attacking addition this summer. He was it. He's playing Preston. He's not playing Newcastle. He's not playing Inter. Are you ready to worry at all that in a summer where we just needed a couple of hits more to go over the top, we are maybe seeing that's not the case, especially with our attacking addition in Raheem Sterling?
Sorry, mute button.
Yeah. I thought
Yeah.
you were just really considering and contemplating the perfect answer to that question.
No, I wasn't
Surely not.
considering it at all. I was just
Okay.
struggling with it. Sterling might be our Yossi Benayoun. That's my hope here. Like second half, we did like him, didn't we? We were like, maybe we should hold on to him. We shouldn't have, but maybe we should. I'm hoping that things warm up a little bit. He came on. I saw him walk out the tunnel at halftime. Him and Zinchenko, and the two of them looked very relaxed, happy, chatting to it. Like I was expecting them to look a little more pissed off at their low prospects for partaking in the game. Of course, Zinchenko got on. But he seems mentally to be in an okay place. Why do we care about that? Well, because he's our problem ultimately. And when he does, hopefully, start to play a more significant role, I don't know why it hasn't been a little earlier than this. He should be more ready than this. He should be more important. I guess most games where he doesn't play, I kind of see why in that game I wouldn't have used him. But at some stage, it's like, hang on, he's just not playing. Because in this game, I wouldn't have, Martinelli was a factor. We mightn't have loved how it was all working, but he was absolutely a factor. He was absolutely banging in crosses. And if you like that sort of thing, and apparently we did yesterday evening, and Mikel Arteta did, he was having a field day swinging in crosses. He was creating threat. You're not going to take Saka off. It was no room at the inn on the evening, but it's one more game when there's no room at the inn. The squad building question, the decisions over the summer, Sterling was a late choice. It was like him or nothing. A deal too good to turn down. What could possibly go wrong? Well, you could say nothing's gone wrong yet. It's just nothing's gone right yet. So we may still be grateful we have him as we get into he should be fit, Jesus, by Christmas, December.
It's usually the time of year most of us become the least fit, to be fair.
Yes, but not him. It's all about timing. So look, he's got 2/3 of the season to get. Maybe it's just like you're just below the level where the manager's going to trust you, but not so far below the level that he's written them off. It's like it may be coming. That can only be the hope. With Merino, look, he made it. I use my casino analogy. You go to the casino, you're not a billionaire. You can't bet on red and white, evens and unevens, 33, 32, 31. I don't know all the numbers.
I don't think even half of this is accurate, but keep going. You're doing great.
Yeah. So casino actually is the French term for roulette, apparently. That's why it's called a casino. I heard that the other day. But I'm getting off topic a little bit.
Just a little.
We couldn't bet on all the squares. We couldn't bet on red and black. He bet on, I don't know, take your pick, black, and picked Merino. He spent money there. He did not spend it on a backup for Odegaard. To Tim's point, there was a profile he's looking for. We had Vieira. That was much more Odegaard's profile. But to your point, I'd even say with transfers, there's thirds, not halves. There's not some are good, some are bad. When we got those 6 guys that summer with Ramsdale, Nuno, remember Nuno, a left back.
How can I forget? White, he's like the best player in Serie A right now, or whatever.
Yeah, White, Odegaard, Tommy. We had what's his face in midfield? What was the young Belgian chap?
Samuel
Lokonga.
Yeah, him. Those were your 6. And I said in the summer, confidently predicted, we'll think 2 are great, 2 are okay-ish, good enough, not good enough, and 2 will be crap. And I picked my 2, one of which was Nuno. Not that he's crap, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't going to cut the mustard.
Again, let me reiterate, the best player in Serie A so far this season. Okay, go on.
But wasn't going to cut the mustard. And I think that's generally a good rule. There's always a couple where you're like, yeah, it's kind of, Tommy's in that category. And like Merino, is he going to be really good? He's going to be at least decent.
Yeah, maybe.
Is he going to be really good? I think he might be really good. That's my instinct on it. But what he's not is the Odegaard profile. Arteta had a choice. Do I go for a backup for Odegaard? He'd been listening to our pods. Odegaard never gets injured.
Oh, God.
That was his bet.
Please stop.
This is only a niggle.
Okay. It's just
You and I, we both
one.
had the
It's just
liggies.
but a scratch. Listen. I think there are some players you buy who are so good, they are always good when they play, right? Bukayo Saka,
Yep.
Martin Odegaard, Declan Rice. Then there are some players who aren't that. And they need to play with the players that are going to unlock why they're good. And I will give Merino this. I think Merino is not a star, okay? Hate to break it to anyone. He's not Odegaard. He's not Saka. He's not Rice. But I think Merino could be a hell of a good player next to Martin Odegaard in the midfield, Declan Rice. So Merino's a guy who I don't think he sucks. He hasn't even sucked so far. I mean, he has a goal against Liverpool. You take that right there. But I think because he's not a star, he's a player that needed to be with the group that he was designed to play with, and he hasn't yet. So I'm willing to wait. Because you know what? When Martinelli's hugging the touchline, and a fullback is dragged out wide, and there's two center backs in the box, and Saka and Odegaard are overloading on the right with White, and everyone gets shifted over there, and you've got two brilliant players in Saka and Odegaard swinging and in-swingers to Kai Havertz and Mikel Merino crash in the box. All of a sudden, this could look really good as one path to goal. When we have all our players, and it's not Leo Trossard pressing, but it's Odegaard and Kai and Merino, like it might all work. So we're going to have to be a bit patient on it. I think it's more a question
Can I
of
add?
profile.
I'll be super disappointed if Merino isn't also the guy who can do triangles on the left-hand side with Martinelli. If he doesn't end up doing triangles like Xhaka did, I'll think I got this wrong. I'll also think I think that Arteta got it wrong, because it ain't enough that he's a dual monster and gets in the box. He can't bypass doing left 8 stuff like Xhaka used to.
Yeah, well, look, let's do this, because I want to talk a little bit about Ethan, and I want to talk about how we create goals. Because the what was it, 43 crosses? How many crosses was it
46.
in this game? 46 crosses, is that right?
Let's not quibble, guys. It was a lot of crosses.
It was a lot. It was enough. Let's put it that way. All the crosses, all the corners. It does look one-dimensional. And while it could have led to a goal, and Saliba should have gotten one, and Gabriel should have gotten one, and Kai should have gotten one, and there were chances, and Merino could have, and that's great, by the way. The variety isn't there. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Ethan. We're going to look at the Chelsea game. But before we do that, I have to tell you about literally just about every brand in the world, because that's how many ads they've asked me to read. So what I would say is settle in. You're going to learn about every brand in the world, and you're just going to be so much better for it. The first you're going to learn about is NordVPN. NordVPN is the way. I'm going to get through this. We're going to get through this. We're going to do this. NordVPN is the way that you can watch all that stuff that's geo-locked. So when you're on social media and they're like, oh my God, you're not going to believe this video, and then says that video is not available in your area, you can watch that video in your area if you have NordVPN. You put it on your iPad, you put it on your iPhone, you put it on your Android tablet, you put it on your computer, you click a button, you say, I want to browse here, and all of a sudden you can watch that video. Or if you want to watch the match of the weekend show, or if you want to watch your football that's only available when you're in your country, you can browse back in your country, you can watch it. By the way, it's threat protection, which is great because it protects you from threats. So NordVPN, it's the app I use. Go ahead and do it. NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, plus 4 months for free. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's NordVPN.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now. And Manscaped. Let me tell you this. I love Manscaped because they give you these products that allow you to shave your body, your whole body, all your body, just shave your whole body. But this is a great new product for shaving your face. It's called the Chairman Pro. I've tried to use electric razors in the past, and I haven't really liked them. These electric razors haven't been good for my neck area, around my nose area. These electric razors haven't been able to get me a close shave without causing me all kinds of problems. This is a brilliant one. It's called the Chairman Pro. It has 4 blades. It's got skin-safe technology. It has an extra head that you can use to get that area around your nose and around your neck. It has a pivoting head technology called Flex Adjust technology that's really good. It's a long battery life. It's waterproof, so you can use it anywhere you want to use it, which is really nice because I like to do this sort of stuff in the shower. So I can do the bottom part, I can do the top part, if you know what I mean. It is going to be able to give you that rugged 5 o'clock shadow or that smooth face, whichever you want. It's really good. It has an LED light. Get the Chairman Pro today and experience a shave that's as smooth as you deserve. Get 20% off free shipping with the code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. That's 20% off free shipping with the code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. Do it now. And if you're going to start a business, you're probably going to want to sell something on the internet. And selling something on the internet means you need a great e-commerce website. And the best way to build a great e-commerce website is with Shopify. Shopify allows you to sell on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook, on Twitter. It makes those integrations really easy. It also does all the cart stuff for you. So it says, hey, you left something in your cart. Do you want to get it? It helps you with the checkout stuff. It helps you with the taxes. It helps you with the shipping. It allows you to focus on making the best products, making the best artwork, making the best t-shirts, making the best mugs, making the best merch, whatever it is you want to sell. It helps you focus on your business without having to focus on your website. But when people come to your website, it looks like a professional professional website. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S., and Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, Brookline, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. So sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ArsenalVision now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now. And last but certainly not least, this podcast is sponsored by Indeed. We love Indeed because Indeed allows you to be able to post your job in one place and get matches fast without having to go to a bunch of different websites. Look, Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of all employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So you get more matches, you get better matches, you get faster matches. You are going to be the place that people want to get hired, and you're going to be able to hire the right talent fast. This is also going to give you the ability to access the best marketplace without having to manage multiple websites. I love it. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners to this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ArsenalVision. Just go to Indeed.com/ArsenalVision right now and support our show by saying you heard about it on Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/ArsenalVision. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire you. Is that enough of that?
Indeed. Do you know a song?
Holy shit! Can I? No, sorry, Tim. I got to cut across you. I'm trying to find the button on my pod app here to turn the speed down to like 1 from 2.75. That was incredible. Sorry, Tim.
Do you know a song called Alphabet Aerobics by Black Alicious?
I most certainly do not.
Yes.
Okay, look it up because I'd like to hear you do a cover of it.
Okay. I mean, that's literally the only reason I'm here. I'm here for that and for nothing else. And I feel like I'm doing my job. And that was my job. Tim.
In the middle of that, did you say something about, you were talking about the manscape and the top half and the bottom half and having a 5 o'clock shadow?
Yeah.
Is that just on the top half?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just on the top half.
To
I have, this is the time of year I go full Santa Claus downstairs. Okay. Tim, it gets cold here, guys. Tim, please.
Yeah.
Last little bits on the Inter game. What's your take on the I think you said it was 97 crosses and 42,000 corners. I mean, on the one hand, they did create dangerous chances. On the other hand, Inter at times I think felt like that's what they were letting us do. We have talent in Bukayo Saka, obviously, and I think we have talent in Martinelli, who is frustrating a lot of people. But at the end of the day, this is what's on offer for them. My frustration, is that there is no combination play. They're really when I think of Arsene Wenger football, and I'm not saying I want to go back to that. I'm not saying Mikel Arteta doesn't have, we've never played pretty football under Mikel. I think about these triangles on the edge of the box and the half space, players going 1, 2, 3, tic-tac-toe. And that's really hard. We imagine that you create tons of chances a game doing that. You really don't create tons of chances a game doing that, especially against defenses as well drilled as Inter. But I just don't see combination play. I see everything funneling out wide and then everything being dumped into the box. So is this a one-off for the Inter game, or is this a real issue? The lack of centrality, the lack of combination play.
No, that is probably the single biggest theme of the last kind of 5 or 6 since Odegaard came out of the team, basically, and that problem clearly was not solved against Inter. How you feel about the crosses? 46 is probably a bit too many. It probably means you don't have a varied enough approach. But at the same time, like you said, we did create danger from some of those crosses, and you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater and just say, no, we can't. I want to create chances like I want to create chances. You want to be threatening in all ways. That means crosses as well. And like I said earlier, Havertz and Merino, that's hopefully that's going to be a bit of a thing for us in the box. But yes, it means that we're not really offering an awful lot of diversity of threat. And, we looked dangerous, some set pieces again, as we always do. And again, that's entirely valid. I think sometimes we get flack from that just because people have got this weird idea about what looking threatening and what attacking football should look like. There's a snobbishness about it that I've talked about a lot before. Since before we appointed Mikel Arteta, about how people get a bit snooty about certain types of attacking, should we say. But absolutely, that is completely a problem. And I said on the instant reaction last night with Nwaneri, I'm very chill about him not starting this game because he's 17 years old. The 2 games he started this season in the League Cup, he's gone off with cramp with both of them. So he's clearly not physically ready to do that yet. But that chance he has at the end in the centre, it kind of jumps out at you, not just because this is clearly a very talented 17-year-old to forge a chance like that, but when like you haven't seen something for a while and you see it and you go, oh yeah, that's what that looks like. That's what it looks like when someone gets the ball in the centre, turns and shoots. Like, I feel like I haven't seen that in quite a long time. And like we absolutely lack centrality. And to Paul's point earlier, it looks like we kind of dropped Trossard deeper because we clearly had an issue against Newcastle where Havertz was, we were asking him to be in situations where Newcastle would have been very happy to see him. I think it's fair to say. And I think, maybe we slightly overcorrected on that. But I think this was more let's have Havertz in the box and let's have Trossard perhaps drop back into some of those spaces. And I think on balance, I'd prefer it that way around. But Trossard's he's a finisher to me. That's what he is. He's not a creator. You want him striding onto things in the penalty area, and we just can't really utilise him like that at the moment. So, lack of centrality is absolutely an issue, and it was always going to be. It was always going to be, just because that's what happens when you lose like your biggest central technical presence.
Well, then if you lack that, you're going to wind up pushing the ball out wide a lot. So, Paul, if you're going to wind up pushing the ball out wide a lot, then you can't have it both ways. You can't say we're not going to attack the center, we're going to attack the wings, but we're also not going to send our fullbacks overlapping. Now, I don't know if we're just protecting Ben White because he's not totally fit or what's going on with Timber. Timber had 3 touches passed deeper than the top of the box, 3. And Ben White had 1. And Timber was underlapping, but he wasn't really overlapping, which that may seem like picking nits, but I think overlapping allows Martinelli to cut in on his right and take a defender away and go 1v1, whereas underlapping doesn't, right? Because it brings the defenders more into the space that you want to attack. What do you think of that? The fact that, I guess I would frame it this way. There is an argument that Mikel Arteta is absolutely hell-bent on control in games and structure and not breaking structure. I think that's a bit unfair. But the way we're using our fullbacks doesn't exactly refute it. We're not getting central access, but we're also not overlapping our fullbacks. So how are we supposed to unsettle a defense? Like, if a defense is in their block and you're not overlapping your fullbacks and you're not getting anything near the center at the top of the box, like, how are you supposed to unsettle that inter-defensive block?
So Mikel Arteta is obsessed with control, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's his MO since he arrived. That's why he kind of built from the back in terms of personnel, Arsenal. He's the most defined barbell approach in terms of styles. Without the ball, it's like, get into shape. They can have the wings, but they will not get through the center. And when we attack, it's typically through the platform of Odegaard, Saka, and White. And I don't think we're going to see any overlapping fullbacks without Odegaard on the pitch, unless it's extreme situations. Then he'll let. But with Odegaard on the pitch, he'll let White get up, get around, run in behind, overlap. But he's not going to let it happen without that stability, knowing that he has Saka, White, and Odegaard in the same part of the pitch, maybe with Thomas Partey behind them, knowing that those guys are technically secure with the ball, that we're not going to lose it. We're not going to do. If there's one thing Arteta hates, it's an uncontrolled counter going against us, a transition against us. He absolutely fucking hates that. And he will not allow that to happen at this Arsenal if he has anything to do with it. And that's why in this game, I'm still fascinated by the Merino thing, because that, I think, is related to the fullbacks. He wanted Martinelli and he wanted Saka wide. He wanted Merino getting into the box for crosses right from, I would say, almost from the get-go. And that means he's not going to, if that was going to happen, he was going to have Timber in midfield filling that spot where Merino was. I think that was the plan. It was like, well, I didn't lose the guy, I got Merino there. And he had Trossard on the other side, and that's why Trossard was filling in that spot. And there wasn't going to be overlapping fullbacks. He wasn't taking that risk. I think he respected Inter, and he was not going to get taken right through the middle of our team by exposing that. His bets were crosses from wide, Merino into the box with Havertz, and hit them with some volume. I think it'll soon be different. You'll see overlapping fullbacks, especially on the right-hand side. As soon as Odegaard's back in and we have more control over possession. Until that happens, he's not sending his fullbacks ahead of the play.
Do you think this has anything to do also with like Party deepest versus like a Rice in terms of pitch coverage from the deeper part of midfield? You know what I mean? Like you mentioned a Party sprint where he had to chase back into his half. Like, first of all, he did it and his fitness looked great. I agree with you. There is that worry that when he starts sprinting, we all know what happens next. I mean, if you've got a Declan Rice covering the middle parts of the pitch, you have a lot more confidence in your ability to recover if you're sending more resources in to support the attack, you know?
Yeah, but I don't think he wants to be in the business of recovering. He doesn't want to be in that business in the first place. He hates uncontrolled transitions. And Declan Rice running around saving the day is not Mikel Arteta's idea of a game going to plan. His idea of a game going to plan is control, technical players on the ball. And so actually, I think Partey might encourage him a little bit more, if anything, but only when he has Odegaard, Saka and White holding onto the ball, Saliba over on that side, good technical players who are very clean with the ball. That's the control side. That's how we actually stop transitions happening. And he's okay in that scenario, getting White ahead of the ball, getting White ahead of the back line, getting him behind. What happens on the left-hand side, we haven't really seen that develop. Calafiori does whatever Calafiori does. I don't know we'll see overlapping fullbacks on the left-hand side, though. Just more support for Martinelli.
Yeah. I just want to emphasize this again, guys. I know I said it, but I do want to make this point. Like, if you don't think our attack looks like it's clicking, you're not going to get an argument from me. If you think we look one-dimensional, if you think we're lacking centrality, if you think we might be short one good quality attacker, that we might be missing, you know, something, like, you're not going to get a lot of arguments from me. But I do think you have to at least, and this was my point earlier about like the nuance of it, I do think you at least have to look through our season, just look through it for a minute and start reading it out to yourself. We won at Villa. We won at Spurs. We beat PSG. We were going to win at the Etihad, and it took them not just sending us down to 10 men, but adding extra time to turn that into a draw, right? We put up two of our biggest XG performances in our history against Southampton and Leicester. We were putting up one of our biggest XG performances. I think we're on pace for it with Brighton before we got sent down to 10 men, right? If you break up the season, we were much better than Liverpool until finally at the end, we're playing with Miles Lewis-Skelly, Kivior, White, and Partey as the back line. And okay, eventually, you know, some good attackers rip that apart. It's just really hard because I feel the frustration. I do. But then I try to point to the game where we should have monstered someone. I'm like, well, what about Bournemouth? Well, 10 men. Okay. No Saka, no Odegaard. All right, fair. Well, we should have slammed who? PSG, City, Villa away, Spurs away. We won those games. Yeah, it's like you start to try to point to the game where we should have monstered someone and we didn't, or we should have looked like us and we didn't. Even Newcastle away, like, okay, that was a bad performance. Like, you're not going to get any argument from me, but Newcastle away isn't a place you're going to go crush someone. You're hoping to get the better of that game, and we didn't. And like, we miss Odegaard. So like, excuses are unsatisfying, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend we look great right now. I think the original sin of this season is two things, really. One, I don't know that we got exactly the right profiles or people we should have this summer. I think the ambition for an attacker should have been more than Raheem Sterling on loan, and I really believe it was, but we didn't execute. You don't get measured on what you try to do. You get measured on what you did. And what you did is you loaned Raheem Sterling on deadline day. Okay? I think the Mikel Merino player could still work out for us profile-wise. I'm not sure I love it. And Calafiori looks fantastic, but he's injury-prone. The other thing is, and we knew this was going to be the case, guys, because it was a Euros summer. All those deals were late. All those deals were late. And we said it on many pods this season. We're going to be in the lab longer than we want to be. We're still very much in the lab. We played limited with Merino, limited with Calafiori, none with Sterling. Odegaard's played 3 games this season. We're very much in the lab. So let's start to talk about what happens from here, Tim. Last little bit on this. Ethan Nwaneri came on. Curious just to get you like 30 seconds on this. I think it's this simple. when he comes on, he doesn't look like a player who can't come in and play at our level. And he looks like a player who goes and operates in places we're not operating. Now, Odegaard's back, so it may immediately become moot. But that turn outside, roll the shoulder, turn, drive, shoot. Like, if there were any runners around him, by the way, he could probably play some win in. So I don't have a problem with him taking on the shot there, but he immediately looks like he adds the exact thing we don't look like we have.
Yeah, definitely. We saw it when he came on against Leicester, was it? And he just drives in and has a shot straight away, has like all that positivity. So, yeah, like I said, I'm all right with him not starting largely for physical reasons because he's 17 and talking about like some, maybe someone like, some of the 17-year-olds at Barca, but Barca have got some 20, 21-year-olds who can't get on the pitch because they were playing every minute when they were 17 at the moment. So, I'm okay with that. But I do wonder what another 5 to 10 minutes, if he could have done that once more, it might have made the difference. Yeah, I'm on board with him not starting per se, but I do think he should be coming on a bit earlier, and I do wonder
why so late.
Yeah,
I always kind of feel like when you give a player 9 minutes, you're barely giving them a chance to, and he did influence game, but like Trossard wasn't. It'd be one thing if Trossard was like right on the edge of breaking the game open and you were having a tough decision, but Trossard was clearly a player who it wasn't happening for him that night. Why couldn't it have been 20 minutes? Why 9 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he got like half an hour against Newcastle, didn't he? And that's the one time where he looked as lost as everyone else, quite frankly. Obviously, can't blame him for that, particularly because he's 17. But that's still a player you're using. You don't get points or anything for, well, he's only 17. So, but yeah, like I definitely think like another 5-10 minutes, particularly with the game state as it was. And, we've struggled with mid blocks this season, but actually what happened in the second half, we were not playing a mid block.
It was a low block.
It was a low block.
Yep.
And
yep.
we tend to look more threatening against those.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, by the way. I think you're dead right. Like, you can criticize the crosses and all you want, but like when Inter did start to sink really deep, they were little, I think, helter-skelter defensively and struggling. Like, first half, I don't think we had them figured out. Second half, when they sank deep, we do look comfortable then. Because when Saliba and Gabriel can push right to the edge of the attacking third, and we can get our players compressed together and a little closer and into those spaces, I do think we look more dangerous. And I'll give Jesus just a little bit of kudos here. I know nobody's excited about the season he's having. I thought he looked a little bit dangerous. I'm going to stay with you for a second here, though, Tim, because now it is an interesting one. We come up against Chelsea, and in theory, we might have Rice, we might have Merino, we might have Odegaard, right? Saka, Martinelli. Kai, I don't know. That was a lot of blood. There was a lot of blood on that trainer's jacket. And I know
concussion protocols.
Yes. Although I think they're kind of a joke, honestly. But Clive made the point, he's like, just staple up his head. And I hear you, mate, but like, this is a player, we want him to put his head in dangerous places, and he's always been willing to. And so you want a Kai who can contest those long balls and aerial duels and things like that. But Chelsea is almost the perfect opposition for us in this respect, Tim. If anybody's worried that we don't have an attack that functions, you're going to get chances to attack Chelsea. They are just not a defensively sound unit. So first things first, let's assume Kai can play, Rice can play, all the players Calafiori side can play. Are you going same lineup, but just Rice for Partey and Odegaard for Trossard? Or are you going back to the 4-3-3 with Partey, Rice, and Odegaard, and Merino goes to the bench? Like, he's got some big choices to make.
Yeah, I can't see him taking Partey out the team, because when was the last time Partey sat on the bench other than Preston? I think we've got to consider that he's a pretty bona fide member of the starting 11 at the moment. I think people like this or not, I fully expect it to be Partey, Rice, Merino. And I think it might be another kind of particularly because of what happened last season, let's not go 2-0 down. Let's not let the game get away from us. And then maybe, I do think Odegaard will figure in this game, and it might be like the last 20, 30 minutes type thing. And I suspect that it will be, there's a pre-Odegaard game plan and a post-Odegaard game plan, depending on game state. Because the thing is about Chelsea, I think you're right, defensively they can be got at. What they have, strangely, this season, one of the things that Maresca, I'm not sure how this is going to work out long term, one of the things Maresca has done, actually, that has really worked for Chelsea is just completely isolate like 20 players from the squad and basically say, I'm just going to pretend you're not here. And I'm going to have a squad of 20. And, we've got the Conference League. So, like, I don't even think they registered Cole Palmer, for example, for the Conference League group stages. Like,
By the way, they just beat something called FC Noah tonight, 8-0.
8-0, yeah.
Heads up, yeah.
But, that they've got that, like, really, like, bifurcate type of, like, there's the Conference League team and there's the Premier League team. And their front four, like, plays together all the time now. Moises Caicedo is beginning to look much more like the £100 million player they've bought. They've kind of come to the stage where they've binned Enzo Fernandez a bit, where they've just gone, when you pay that much money for a player and you've kind of got to persevere, but they've just come to the point where they're like, no, and they've started leaving him out, and they do have a better balance. But one of the things
they've just come to the point, Tim, where they do have a problem with what he said last summer. After all,
yes, yeah, indeed.
Yeah, they found integrity all of a sudden.
Yeah, and like, but the thing is that they can really do on you is they can break on you. With that's basically what their front four is designed to do. It's a broken play front four. We saw it last season. They want to break on you. And so I do think that Arsenal, and with some justification, like, Arsenal will probably try and handle this carefully. I'm trying to think, what happened in the game last year? Was it Zinchenko started and came off for Tomiyasu at half time, I think, last year, because Chelsea were just getting a bit too much joy in that broken play. So I think that what Arsenal will try and do is, I don't want to use the word stodgy, but I think they'll want to be like pretty tight and secure, and then gradually maybe like get your hands around the game, push onto them, and then introduce someone like Ødegaard, and that's a significant weapon. Actually,
so someone like Ødegaard, I think, isn't that very much the problem?
Well, no, but that's like at the very least, right? Because we're all, like, rightly so, we're hyper focused on Ødegaard coming back, completely justifiably, and we're hyper focused on getting back to the stage where he's playing every minute of every game. But it's not. I don't think that's going to happen in this game. Having him on the bench, and I think usable from the bench, I do think that potentially changes things for us, and hopefully psychologically as well. Just that feeling both for us and for Chelsea that he's kind of there lurking behind the curtain. Like, if Arteta's looking for like the spark plugs to try and generate some belief in this team, like I do think that can be pretty significant for us, because if we started him, he'd be off after 60 minutes, right? And I think that they might make the decision rather have him for the final 30.
See, it's a tough one for me, because I think Thomas Partey's been our best midfielder this season, and it's not close. And I'd still drop him, I think, and play a Rice, Merino, and Ødegaard midfield, only because I think, first of all, I think you want Declan Rice running around and following Cole Palmer and bodying him. Cole Palmer dropping into space. They've given him this number 10 role. He is the danger man. He is where it all starts. Being able to find Nico Jackson running in behind, like that's the danger man. And I don't know that I want Partey responsible for that. I think I would like the combination of maybe a fullback tucking in like a Timber, but also Declan Rice. And I think Mikel Merino, like Caicedo's looking better and better, but I think physically he could be beaten. He's not the biggest guy, and I think Mikel Merino could give him trouble tracking his runs and physically. And then you have Ødegaard on a young Romeo Lavia. I think he can maybe cause some problems there. Their back line is where they look most vulnerable. I mean, Gusto, Reece James, if he's fit, is he fit? Levi Colwell, Wesley Fofana, and they have Robert Sanchez, who's an absolute joke in goal. So I think the back five is where you can get some joy off them. I think corners once again will be a big deal, because I think they're going to be beaten there. I think, this is going to be a game where we will have chances. They are not just going to bunker. They are going to try to come out and play. And, I don't know how we'll cope with their threat, because they are actually quite good attacking, but they have 2 clean sheets this season, one against West Ham and one against Bournemouth in a game where they gave up 1.7 XG. Other than that, they're giving up a decent chunk of expected goals most games. So, Paul, how would you do it? I mean, I know everyone's going to roll their eyes out of their head at me saying bench Partey, because he has been our best midfielder, but I just sort of think I want someone who can run around a little more, cover a little more ground, and maybe follow Cole Palmer around in Declan Rice,
Well, can I do that thing I do every now and then where I tell you you're completely nuts and it turns out you end up being right and
Well, you won't be alone telling me that. So
yeah. Well,
yeah.
like you're nuts if you think Odegaard's starting. That he's even an
Well,
option.
you don't think he's going to start?
He can't. He played 2 minutes for a reason in this game.
Interesting. I mean, I assume he will. I mean, he's kind of like Bukayo Saka, I think, for Mikel, which is if he's fit enough to do anything, he's starting. Like I believe that, but I could be obviously.
Well, given our whole season relies on him, I would like to think that Arteta has a little bit of chill. And like the other side of it is Tim's point that if you put him on, you're going to lose him at 60 minutes. Like you're going to play the last 30, 35 minutes without Odegaard because surely after it like we brought on Nwaneri and Zinni on 80 minutes. You'd bring on Odegaard then?
The only reason he came on at all, I think, is because Kai Havertz got hurt. I don't think the plan was to use him at all in this game. I think the plan was to just keep him wrapped in cotton wool and start him against Chelsea.
That's why I think you're absolutely nuts.
I might be.
And I will be proven wrong again this weekend. I can't imagine him playing.
You mean starting? You can't imagine him starting.
Can't imagine him starting, yeah.
Right, okay,
But I can absolutely see him coming on at 30 minutes. With 30 minutes to go. Getting everything the wrong way around here. I'm not too worried about Partey over Rice. I think our midfield will be Partey with Rice and Merino, assuming you were talking about whether it was his big toe or not. Declan Rice's toes, all his toes are big toes. He needs to man up. To Clive's point, he needs to put a couple of staples in it to the next toe and play on. But it'll be interesting if we don't have him, but that's how I think our configuration will be. I think we'll have a very workmanlike performance, as Tim says. I don't think we're going to be vulnerable specifically because of Partey. If we have Timber at left back, you have Gabriel, and you have the technical security the Partey has, maybe over Declan Rice. I think you're at least as secure. You still have Declan Rice on the pitch, and you have Merino probably on the left-hand side with Rice on the right, or maybe, probably it's going to be Declan Rice on the left. So he's covering that corridor where Cole Palmer floats around. I don't think you lose too much out of it, except in the attacking sense, we're not going to have quite the spice and sizzle we might look for. So I think it's going to be pretty workmanlike to Tim's formula for 60 minutes. And if we're fairly level, I think that'll suit us at that point, get Odegaard on and actually go for the 3 points at that stage. I think that's what we're going to do.
Interesting. Tim, first of all, do you agree with Paul? Have I jumped the gun here?
He should. I'm agreeing with him.
But it still wouldn't. I wouldn't be enormously surprised if he did start. I don't think he will. I kind of don't think he should. But
Christ, you guys are nuts.
wouldn't be that surprised. I wouldn't.
Okay. Set that aside just for a minute. I want to put you on the spot a little bit. Right now, we are on 18 points. We are 7 points back of Liverpool, 5 back of City, if you still think that's what really matters. We're level on points, actually, with Chelsea, and level on points with Villa, 2 points above Spurs. Like, it's a little congested, and I think we want to be a little bit more one of the ones distinguish themselves at the top than in that pack behind. How do you rate this in terms of must win, must not lose? How do you think about this game in terms of what I know everybody hates the must win? I mean, it's November 7th as we sit here, but I think there are a lot of people that feel our Premier League hopes require a win here. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I'd say it's 100% must not lose. Absolutely. Like if we lose, I wouldn't like surrender the title, but I would stop thinking that we
can win it.
Yeah, can. It's a weird word, isn't it? Yeah, I'd psychologically I'd go to the place where I'd be like, okay, let's try and get back in the race, but it's not going to happen this year, type thing. I'm fine with people saying it's must win. I'm at least 95% there. I think that is just the reality. Otherwise, we really start to slip back. I mean, maybe the fixture. I mean, I say the fixture list looks kinder like Nottingham Forest the third, and that's who we've got next. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I really like a draw, and I wouldn't completely write us off. I might have that. Well, things are going to have to be like we're going to have to go on a run like last season again to have any chance. Lose, and I think I'd very quickly come to the place where I'd think, yeah, not this year. So 100,000% must not lose. I'm probably at about 95% must win. And if someone came to me and said it's 100% must win, I wouldn't argue with them.
I mean, some of this obviously depends on what you think it's going to take to win the title this season. If it's going to take 92 points to win the title, it may already be beyond us. I mean, candidly, unless we can do what we did last. I mean, I think people think we can go on a run like we did last season. Well, we'd never done that before, right? So that would take a lot. If it's going to take 89 points to win the title, I think it very much still could happen. But you don't want to be losing this game at the weekend. If it's going to take 85 points to win the title, all of a sudden, who knows what could happen, right? I mean, Liverpool's hard fixtures are coming up. So we're going to learn a little bit about what they're going to do as a pace setter pretty soon here. Vice versa for us, we're going to learn if we're the team of last season pretty soon. Because after Chelsea, with all due respect to Forest, who look amazing, it's Forest, West Ham, United at the Emirates, Fulham, Everton, Palace, Ipswich, Brentford, Brighton, right? Spurs and Villa at home, Wolves, and then it's Manchester City. That's a long stretch where we're probably going to be strong favorites in all those games. And that doesn't mean we're going to win all those games. But last season, we probably would have or thereabouts, right? So following the Chelsea game, we have the period of the season that I've been asking for, which is what I would call the serene period. There's no serene period in the Premier League. But what I mean, Paul, is serene in the sense that we should be pretty fit. Fingers crossed we look like we're getting there. And we have games that aren't these fraught rivals. You know, we're playing City, we're playing Villa, we're playing Newcastle, we're playing Chelsea. Like games that we can maybe tone down the blood pressure, and games where we should have the players we feel we need to be one of the top teams in the league. So that run is going to be really important. But to Tim's point, it may not matter if we don't get the result of the weekend. How do you rate that game in terms of what we have to do?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a must win. Just kind of is, especially psychologically where we're at. You know, but there's an international break straight after it. Whatever happens, there's kind of a bit of a reset, and you say, well, look, you want to go into it with the win. Of course you do. But if you go into it with the lose, you've some time to get your head together. So I'm not 100% on this. You got to win. I think what you got to do is you got to stay fit. And, you know, you say, oh, how do you do that? Well, how do you do anything, right? How do you must win? How do you must stay fit? If you gave me the two of those, I think we got to stay fit. I would take the loss.
Oh, God.
And and I would have all our guys, you know, within reasonable bounds, stay fit for this season. Because if we don't have that, I think we've seen enough players go missing. We haven't really found our combos yet. What we need is consistency of this team. If you gave me consistency and fitness, I'd say we don't absolutely have to win this game. We'll get into a groove. We can make things happen. We can beat City at home. If we're really getting our shit together, we can beat Liverpool away. They just need to slip up once or twice. So no, we don't have to win. But if the season's going to keep doing what it's doing to us right now, we've got to win. Did that answer the question? I don't know.
No. But I thank you for the response. Look, it's this simple to me. We have to get into points accumulation mode one way or the other now.
Yeah.
Right? Like where I think we're on a 1.7 or 1.8 point pace right now, which is like a 68 point season or something. We want to be on like a 90 point season pace, but we can't be on a 90 point season pace the rest of the season because we're already on a 68 point pace so far. So we are going to have to get back into that zone where we're playing in a mid 90s pace for months. And starting it now would be very, very handy. Because the other thing I think that's going to happen, you guys, inevitably, I don't know that the weak teams are going to fall away like they did last season. I don't think Chelsea are going away. I don't think Villa are going away. I think Spurs are probably pretty bad, and I don't think United will be good. But like, City and Liverpool aren't going to go away. And if Chelsea and Villa are pretty good, you can wind up in a situation in the Premier League you don't want to be in, where instead of thinking about title, which is all you had your eyes set on, suddenly you're making sure you don't slip out of a Champions League place. None of us are prepared for that to be the discussion. We do not want to be back in that place. Losing to Chelsea for all those reasons would be devastating. So let's make sure that doesn't happen. I'll tell you something though. I still think we're really good, and I have a feeling we're going to show it. I think we've been a victim of some bad circumstance. I appreciate if anybody doesn't agree with that. We'll see. We got to start putting out lineups, though, that look like they can hurt teams. And that starts on Sunday. So big game ahead. We'll have a patron pod for you tomorrow, which whatever it is with Clive, we're definitely going to cover Mikel's presser and talk Chelsea a little bit with him. And then we'll have an instant reaction on Sunday. We're also going to start doing watch-alongs for patrons on a new platform that just came out. And it's really cool because this platform has a tactics board. So it's got a tactics board where you can show where the players are moving and arrows and circle them and move the ball around. And it's got a live scoreboard. So not sort of your YouTube-y watch along, but ideally a little bit more of a thoughtful tactical analysis. Because one thing I heard from a lot of people this week on Champions League is like, I can't watch TNT cover football anymore. I can't watch some of these broadcasters because that's how bad it's getting. So we will be doing some watch alongs for patrons if you want to check that out. That's going to start here pretty soon. Okay. We've been going for 90 minutes. We got to leave it there. Tim's on Twitter at Stillmanator. Thank you, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
Paul's on Twitter. Pause my pants. Thanks, pause. My name's Elliot Smith, Blackman, Twitter, Yank Gunner. We love you. For the love of God, we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Chelsea 0.